As we know, the world's been brought to a bit of a halt, which for most of us has resulted in significantly more time at home. During this time, I found myself watching plenty more movies. Sean Baker's 2017 drama The Florida Project is a film that separated itself from the rest because of just how relevant it feels. It stuck with me weeks after watching it. The Florida Project is a must-watch film because of how it represents nuanced and forgotten people while beautifully reminding us of the power of imagination through a child's perspective. The film focuses on the summer of 6-year-old Mooney, who lives with her young mother Haley in a motel called Magic Castle, just outside Disney World. While they're close to the most magic place on Earth, they're by no means a part of it. The distant fireworks and half-hearted gift shops are only a taste of the magic that lies down the road. Their motel is evidently cheap, yet Haley struggles to make rent every week. The owner of the motel, Bobby, is understanding with her, though she doesn't seem to make any true effort to make money. Despite the rather bleak situation she's surrounded by, Mooney makes the best of her childhood. She spends the days running around exploring with her friends Scooty and Jancy, using her imagination and whatever else is available to fill the days with fun. But the film is careful not to romanticize the cyclical life of poverty. While Mooney has plenty of adventures, laughs, and excitement, she seems to partially understand the true nature of the life she's been raised in, which makes this film so deeply compelling. It's an honest representation rather than a glorified story. Sean Baker went into this project prepared to make it realistic rather than glorified. In 2001, Baker began reading news stories on the housing crisis of people who didn't live on the street but couldn't afford a permanent home. In an interview, he mentioned reading that up to 5,000 children were living along Route 192 in motels at one point, and said, quote, "I felt it was something I definitely didn't know about, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't know about. So it was something, through dramatizing, we could shed light on." Baker does just that in the Florida Project by preserving the situation's authenticity. Perhaps most notable about the film is how bright and visually striking it is. The colors are warm and playful. It looks comfortable. From the first shot of the film, we see things as kids do. This continues throughout the movie as the camera often features shots of the children with adults' legs cut off around the waist, a la Charlie Brown. Even many shots that aren't focused on the children themselves are shot from a low perspective. This puts you in the visual shoes of the children themselves. We're reminded of just how grand everything appears at 6 years old, the possibilities that are presented in the most mundane of spaces. It's in these spaces that we see Mooney's gift in the film, her imagination. This is laid out to us less than 15 minutes into the movie. Mooney and Scooty knock on the door of a neighboring motel. The door is home to their new friend Jancy. When they ask Jancy's guardian if Jancy could come play with them, she keeps asking, "Playing what? Playing what? What are you playing?" To which Mooney keeps replying, "We're just playing." They don't need any place to go or anything to do. There doesn't need to be some inherent purpose to their actions. They're comfortable simply being friends and using their imagination, and it doesn't occur to them that it should be any other way. While she can't experience the wonder of Disney's Animal Kingdom, Mooney can imagine a safari. There are no fairies, but there's an old wizard on the front of a nearby gift shop. While her circumstances are far from ideal, she makes the best of them. In this time of coronavirus, I found it powerful to see a 6-year-old with such far worse conditions than I still manage to live every day with energy and a smile. It feels interesting, too, this emphasis on imagination, because of the proximity to Disney World. In the Disneyification of Central Florida, author Kevin Archer notes, "The Disney Company is nothing if not the master of facade and fantasy." He writes of how many cities hide their problems rather than solving them, and the situation here is no different. Archer writes that just like those other cities, the many unhappy realities of life in Central Florida are simply imagineered away. The difference is, corporate funders can help the poor and choose to imagine the problems away. Mooney is helpless and has no other choice. This contrast is one of the many that illustrate the nuance of issues in this film. What further makes this film so real is how it feels almost episodic. Traditionally, this isn't the most exciting. We as moviegoers typically expect a three-act story with a clear goal and character growth, but Baker aimed to break away from that standard structure. Instead, the film plays like real life. Days melt into each other with constant cycles and loops. The same people, places, and things happening over and over, to the point where it leads us to wonder if we're rewatching the same scene. The film isn't bland, though. It's in this repetition that we could fully absorb what we're seeing. It allows the viewer to get a grasp of the detail of the moment. I believe it's in this repetition where we learn about Haley, the other, quote, protagonist of the film, if you will, though it's hard to define any typical roles in this movie. Time and time again early in the film, we see motel manager Bobby telling Haley she's overdue and needs to pay her rent. This then turns to Haley trying to sell perfume to tourists in the parking lots of nearby golf clubs. Later, it becomes repeated shots of Mooney in the bathtub, which we later come to learn is when Haley has clients over for sex work. And while Haley demonstrates so many blatantly poor parental actions, smoking in front of her kids, being completely disrespectful to others, and straight up committing crimes, we still feel sympathy for her. She has anger issues. She'll shriek, yell, and complain to anyone within earshot, and yet we never once see her get upset at her own child. You feel yourself growing angry towards Haley watching the movie, watching her jeopardize the life of her own innocent child, and failing to even attempt teaching her right and wrong. But it's at these moments, these sad moments where we start to see Mooney becoming Haley right before our eyes, that we realize Haley once was a Mooney herself. How is Haley to teach Mooney to behave properly if no one ever taught her? And thus, the film successfully shines its light on the cycle of poverty and struggling parents in cities, all whilst reminding us of the beautiful power of imagination. So while you're stuck inside during these crazy times, take a hint from me. Watch The Florida Project. I promise you won't regret it.